Hello, YouTube, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 10 articles in this episode for you. All the URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. The first one here is off of Western Journalism, and it says, China, timing of new Ivanka trademark purely coincidental. There are perhaps media engaging in hyping certain gossip. See what this says. To Chinese officials, it was just a coincidence that Ivanka Trump received 3 trademark approvals from the People's Republic on the same day she dined with Chinese President Xi Jinping, arousing further concerns about conflicts of interest in the family of President Donald Trump. His daughter, line of jewelry, clothing, and accessories, as well as serving as White House advisor, has received provisional approval trademarks since her father assumed office. 3 of them were approved April 6, the same day President Trump hosted Xi at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, according to press report. Ivanka and her husband, Jared Kushner, who one of Trump's key advisors, joined the 2 presidents for dinner that evening. Foreign Affairs Ministry spokesman Liu Kang addressed the issue the next day, dismissing the notion of a causal relationship between the meeting and the trademark approvals. There are perhaps media engaging, hyping certain gossip to hint at something undisclosed, Liu said. I can tell you that they will never succeed. Liu said that China does not play favorites in granting trademarks and that it adheres to the principles of giving equal protection to foreign trademark holders. The trademarks were granted to Ivanka Trump Marks LLC, Ivanka's brand, relinquished management of the company since assuming her White House post. She retains ownership of the business and frequently appears in public wearing her own products. Despite several boycotts and several retailers discontinuing her merchandise, her sales have hit record numbers in 2017. 32 Trump trademarks are still pending in China, with an additional 9 pending in the Philippines, Canada, Puerto Rico, and even if the timing of the newest approvals is coincidental, as Liu contends, questions about ethics persist. Ivanka has so many China ties and conflicts, yet she and Jared appear deeply involved in China contacts and policy. I would never have allowed it, said Norman Eisen, chief of White House ethics lawyer and the Barack Obama administration. For their own sake and the country's, Ivanka and Jared should consider stepping away from China matters. See if we can get it to scroll up a little bit more. Come on, hamster. Richard Painter, who held the same position under President George W. Bush, concurred. Put the business on hold and stop trying to get trademarks while you're in government. He said she would steer clear of policy matters directly related to her business, but that she was under no obligation to avoid broader issues like trade with China generally. Article is off of BizPac Review, and it says Howard Dean mocked for totalitarian stance on hate speech. Judge Janine warns it's not so funny. Is former Vermont Governor Howard Dean's latest stunt part of a bigger plan by a party that is imploding? In a tweet on Thursday, in response to conservative author Ann Coulter's impending trip to the University of California, Berkeley, the former Democrat National Committee chair said that hate speech is not protected by the First Amendment. Contributor Judge Janine Pirro believes that Dean didn't send that message because he has no idea what the Constitution says, but because it's only the beginning of the left's assault on free speech of conservatives. This is just the beginning. You mark my words, Pirro warned on Fox and Friends on Friday, where the left is now to silence the right, and they have been silencing the right in so many ways. They are now going to say, if you say things we don't like, it's not protected by the First Amendment. Understand this is a political agenda to shut down the right from saying what they want, she added. If they don't yell you down and prevent you from saying it, what they will do now is create some kind of a limit. Pirro explained that the only speech that is outlawed is dangerous speech, like yelling fire in a crowded theater. Hate speech is protected speech, she said. You can say whatever you want as long as it is not something that is criminalized. And by Howard Dean saying that, they are changing the paradigm. They are changing the First Amendment. The founding fathers are twisting in their graves. In 2015, the left-leaning Washington Post explained there is no hate speech exemption to the First Amendment. And Dean was roundly lambasted on social media for his ridiculous statement. Neil Bortz put out a tweet that says, "You're an idiot. How did you get through medical school?" Another one puts out a tweet that says, "Can you help me out and explain what things you would jail people for saying? I assume nothing on the Democratic platform." A tweet says, "Just imagine this guy who doesn't understand the First Amendment ran the DNC and tried to become president. Thank God he failed." Another one says, "All speech, especially hate speech, is protected. You're constitutionally retarded buffoon." The next one says, "Wrong. Lucky you. Ignorant speech is also guaranteed protection." Another one says, "Love you, Howard, but hate speech is protected speech and for good reasons." And the final one here says, "The left clamping down on hard," try that again, "the left clamping down hard on free speech. They are fundamentally anti-American." The next article is Conservative Tribune. It says, Huma Abdin once reported $2 million to write a memoir. Former Democrat presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's advisor, Huma Abdin, is tell-all memoir, and apparently she thinks her story is worth quite a bit of money. About $2 million, sources told The Hollywood Reporter. According to the newspaper, Abdin, 40, has met with top literary agents to discuss a book that is envisioned as a reflection on how her personal and professional lives collided during the campaign. The book reportedly has Clinton's blessing. She's more interesting than her husband. We know who she is. She's the ongoing mystery, Principal University presidential historian Julian Zieltzer told the reporter. Put yourself out there. That's what the publisher will be looking for. Abdin has never given an interview on the subject of scandals surrounding her husband, former Democrat congressman and failed New York City mayoral candidate Anthony Weiner. Some publishers might find that appealing. However, the fact remains that she would actually have to offer up some new details to make the book worth buying, and there's no indication that she might be willing to do that. In fact, some sources say she's willing to give the marriage another try, so telling all on Weiner wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. It could, however, help out with paying for Weiner's legal defense as he faces possible indictment on child pornography charges. There's no doubt that there would be some people interested in Abdin's story, but it's quite ambitious of her to seek out so much money considering her boss's last book flopped. The book might be as much of a tell-all as any of Clinton's books, which do nothing but tell little. First, Abdin better be prepared to tell a lot. The next article's off of Liberty Writers. It says she's ruined. New Hillary Clinton leaks will end her politics forever. We could only hope. Look, we all know that Hillary is a paranoid loser, but now we finally have what we need to prove it to the world. In the new book, Shattered, which chronicles Hillary's path to failure, it was revealed that she spied on her own staff after losing to Obama in 2008. The book said she instructed a trusted aide to access her campaign server and download the messages sent and received by top staffers. This does not look good for Hillary Clinton. She may not go to jail, but one thing's for sure, after reading this, nobody smart will work with her in politics ever again. A source close to Clinton told the authors she believed her campaign had failed her, not the other way around, and she wanted to see who was talking to who and who was leaking to who. According to the book, Hillary's own staff started getting nervous when she inexplicably knew everything about her campaign headquarters despite her being on the trail. That is really just sad. Even to this day, she cannot see that she was the problem, not her staff, not Obama, not Russia, not Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton is the only person to blame for Hillary Clinton losing, period. The next article is off BizPac Review. It says, Clinton staffer launches desperate Twitter photo campaign in response to tell-all book. Former staffers with Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign rushed to defend their leader with a series of tweets Wednesday evening after a tell-all book put the failed candidate in a thoroughly negative light. Former press secretary Nick Merrill defended Clinton by sharing pictures intended to combat the narrative Clinton was full of rage at staffers, starting a tweet of candid photo of grinning staffers. The photo must have been staged, he tweeted. Merrill then shared a black and white photo of two men hugging. Here is a terrible argument I had with fellow staffer Greg Hale, he tweeted. Another tweet bemoaned miserable birthday celebration. Another tweet showed the very angry Clinton speaking with her response team. And this is unforgivable, he tweeted, with a photo of a hug between Clinton and a fan. Another tweet mocks the suggestion Clinton would steal a baby she took a picture with on the campaign trail. And here's another obviously staged photo. This time it proves that there wasn't any staff inviting, according to the former Clinton staffer. Former staffer Jennifer Palmieri was more direct in her defense of Clinton, asserting a tweet that everyone in the staff worked hard and we were proud of Clinton. Her tweet says, I don't recognize campaign depicted in Shattered. It was tough, but we stuck together and all are proud of how hard our candidate fought. Shattered described Clinton as a candidate with almost no perception of her own shortcomings. She regularly raged at staffers for their poor decisions, and campaign manager Bobby Mook was forced to atone for poor decisions he made with campaign spending and grassroots organizing. The next article is off BizPac Review, and it says, watch Trump smile when Fox News correspondent asked Italian Prime Minister about contributing fair share at NATO. On Thursday, Italian Prime Minister Paolo Gentiloni, or I'm not sure I pronounced that right, Gentiloni, yeah, it is, I think, joined President Donald Trump at the White House to discuss issues surrounding the global fight against terrorism. Both leaders had praise for each other during the joint news conference, but they didn't always agree. While President Trump made a point to praise Italy for their troop contribution to fight against terror in places like Afghanistan, the fact remains that Gentiloni's nation isn't exactly meeting the 2% GDP threshold that all members have pledged to support NATO. This fact was swiftly highlighted by the very first question to the Italian Prime Minister brought by Fox News chief White House correspondent John Roberts. President Trump would like to see all NATO members contribute 2% of their GDP to NATO. Your contribution is slightly less than 1%. Will you commit to committing 2% of your GDP to the alliance going forward? Roberts asked. Before Gentiloni answered, President Trump smiled and told Roberts, I love the question you asked the Prime Minister. I look forward to his answer because I'm going to ask him very soon. The commitment has been made, Gentiloni said. We are used to respecting our commitments. This will be a gradual process. To give the issue some perspective, Italy paid around $23 billion last year, or slightly more than 1% of its GDP, instead of the $43 billion they are expected to pay for their own defense. By contrast, the United States spent $608 billion, or twice what is expected to contribute. The two leaders also disagreed on policy in Libya. While Gentiloni wants Western allies to solve the migrant crisis together, President Trump said, I do not see a role in Libya. We have enough roles. We have a role everywhere. The next article is off of BizPac Review. It says Ted Nugent amps up outrage when he lets slip what someone on White House tour said about Hillary's portrait. Liberals having a meltdown over the White House visit of Kid Rock, Sarah Palin, and Ted Nugent were sure to be triggered by Nugent's remark about a photo taken with Hillary Clinton's portrait. The trio were guests of President Trump at the White House Wednesday, and after a personal tour by the president himself, had some fun posing for a photo in front of Clinton's official White House portrait before leaving. According to Nugent, one member of the group on the tour suggested they flip the bird at the former First Lady's portrait. He did not reveal who it was. I politely declined, but the juxtaposition speaks for itself, the rocker told the New York Times in an interview published on Thursday. We were there for 4 hours, man, Nugent said. He gave us a wonderful personal tour of every room and talked about the origins of every carpet and every painting. There was a Monet, and we had dinner. The 68-year-old rocker was invited, along with Kid Rock and Palin, who were initially extended the invitation to visit with Trump. The White House press secretary, Sean Spicer, said the meeting was a long-planned thank you to the former Alaskan governor for her support of the president during the campaign, according to the Times. Nugent described the trip, which included the tour, a private dinner, and chatting with the president on a variety of topics, as much more than a visit. It was like a family reunion, he said. None of us expected this. Not surprisingly, the visit caused outrage with snowflakes on social media, and the photo added insult to injury for leftists who worship the Clinton throne. And there's a bunch of tweets here about it. It says Twitter users on the right were naturally all for the visit and the photo mockery, reminding critics of some other White House visitors from the not too distant past. And there's a bunch of tweets about that. And a picture of some of them flipping off Ronald Reagan's photo or portrait in the White House. The next article here's off BizPac Review. It says Paul Ryan admits Trump surprised him, now believes if anyone can defy the odds, it's him. Had it been Larry the Cable Guy making the appraisal, he would have said Trump knows how to get her done. But it was the White House Speaker Paul Ryan that Time magazine asked to assess President Donald Trump for the publication's 100 Most Influential People, and he didn't hold back in his praise, beginning with his triumph at the polls on November the 8th. He always finds a way to get it done. When so many, including me at times, didn't see how he could pull it off, Donald Trump won a historic victory, and in becoming the 45th president of the United States, he completely rewrote the rules of politics and reset the course of this country, the Wisconsin Republican said. Ryan continued by observing what sets the 45th president apart from lesser individuals. Where others would pivot, he stays true to who he is. Where others would turn back, he forges ahead. Close up, I have found a driven, hands-on leader with the potential to become a truly transformational American figure. I have little doubt that he will, once again, find a way to defy the odds and get it done. Ryan, as it turns out, was the ideal person to write about Trump for the magazine. He made a similar appraisal the day after the election when he defeated an opponent everyone considered unstoppable. And there is video of Ryan in this. Ryan's speech calling Donald Trump's victory the most incredible, and then it kind of trails off. So there's that if you want to read that or check that out. The next one's off the Daily Signal. It says, after State Department snub, senators look to other means to investigate tax dollars propping up Soros work. And this is in teeny tiny print, so I'm going to try to blow this up a little bit bigger here at Zoomer. Okay, it starts out here by saying the article has been corrected and updated since the publication, and the details about the changes are at the end of the article. So let's get into it. It says Republican senators could investigate U.S. tax dollar funding liberal billionaire George Soros networks abroad through other means if the Trump administration State's Department doesn't provide answers. 6 GOP senators wrote Secretary of State Rex Tillerson in March to ask for a State Department probe into how the federal grants are being used by Soros-funded open society foundations, specifically in Macedonia, to promote progressive causes and undermine conservatives and moderate political leaders in those countries. The State Department Bureau of Legislative Affairs responded not by addressing the question of a probe, but defending the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID. Senators Mike Lee of Utah and James Inhofe of Oklahoma, Ted Cruz of Texas, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, Tom Tillis of North Carolina, and David Perdue of Georgia made the initial inquiry to Tillerson. Lee hoped for more in the response. Goes on here, says Senator Lee was not satisfied with the letter and believes the matter needs to be reviewed by Secretary Tillerson. Lee's spokesman, Con Carroll, told the Daily Signal in a statement, if the State Department is unwilling to give this a serious look, we will look at options to force the issue through other means. Neither the State Department nor USAID responded to inquiries from the Daily Signal for this story. In a statement, the Open Society Foundation responded with this. It says the Open Society Foundation has a consistent, nonpartisan approach around the world to advancing justice, human rights, and good governance. We do this by spending nearly $1 billion of our own money each year on non-political organizations that work to improve healthcare, education, community activism, and journalism. USAID money makes up a minuscule portion. Try it again. USAID money makes up a minuscule proportion of money administered by only a handful of Open Society national foundations. In the instances USAID chooses an Open Society national foundation to administer USAID funds, which go on to NGOs in the field. It is because we have a reputation for transparency, efficiency, and professionalism in countries where those institutional qualities are rare. We co-fund the same organizations that other international donors, such as the European Union, USAID, and private US, French, and German foundations fund because we share a common interest in improving the human condition. The article goes on here and says the March 4th letter from the senators to Tillerson asked the department to investigate all funds associated with promoting democracy and governance and review the programs, accounts, and multiplicity of U.S. entities involved in such activities. The letter also states that the U.S. must review how all our tax dollars are being utilized in order to halt activities that are fomenting political unrest, disrespecting national sovereignty and civil society, and ultimately undermine our attempts to build beneficial international relationships. When members of a president's own party write to a cabinet secretary, a more direct response might be anticipated. In this case, a career State Department employee signed a letter in response, which didn't satisfy Lee. Joseph E. McManus, the State Department's executive secretary, signed a March 23rd letter that never directly responded to the call for an investigation. USAID issues clear guidelines to its missions and implementing partners that USAID assistance program must adhere to the principle of supporting representative multi-party systems and must not seek to determine election outcomes, McManus' letter said. The response continues saying, U.S. policy in Macedonia is to support the country's Euro-Atlantic integration and the reforms necessary to advance the goal. In Albania, U.S. policy supports the country's accession to the European Union and the reforms necessary to advance the goal. This includes funding and support for judicial reform or fighting corruption and organized crime and countering violent extremism. The senators highlighted the countries mentioned above in their original letter to Tillerson, which said, as a recipient of multiple grant awards and serving as a U.S. aid contractor implementing projects in this small nation of 2.1 million people, our taxpayer funding foreign aid goes far, allowing Foundation Open Society Macedonia, or the OFSM, to push a progressive agenda and invigorate the political left. USAID has provided the Soros-funded Open Society Foundation $4.8 million in Macedonia, according to Judicial Watch. In conducting its own investigation, obtaining documents, and doing interviews with officials from U.S. and Macedonia, Judicial Watch announced in a press release Wednesday that it has learned the following. The Open Society Foundation has established and funded dozens of left-wing, non-governmental organizations, or NGOs, in Macedonia to overthrow the conservative government. One Macedonian government official interviewed by Judicial Watch is in Washington, D.C., recently called the Soros Infantry. The groups organize youth movements, create influential media outlets, and organize violent protests to undermine the institutions and policies implemented by the government. One of the Soros groups funded the translation and publication of Saul Alinsky's Rule for Radicals into Macedonia. In Albania, it has been reported that the Open Society Foundation has been supporting judicial reforms that would ostensibly benefit progressive candidates. The GOP senator's March 14th letters stated, Foundation Open Society Albania, or FOSA, and its experts with funding from USAID have created the controversial strategy document for Albanian judicial reform. Some leaders believe these reforms are ultimately aimed to give Prime Minister Edi Rama, and left-of-center government full control over judiciary power. The Open Society Foundation denies the Foundation for Open Society in Albania has received USAID funding. And then it says, this article has been updated since publication to include the Open Society Foundation statement, which was received after initial publication. Additionally, the piece has been corrected to reflect that the U.S. Senator's letter of March 14th expressed concern of the USAID grants in Macedonia. This article has also been corrected to reflect that, according to the March 14th letter from the senators, there is concern that Foundation Open Society Albania is involved in judicial reform in Albania, not that George Soros himself is involved in such reform. The paragraph mentioning the role of FOSA in Albania's judicial reform efforts has been revised only to mention those issues directly related to judicial reform. The article was also corrected to reflect that Senator David Perdue's correct first name. So there you have that article. The next one and final one in this episode is off of BizPac Review, and it says, man of many houses, Sanders, ask how many yachts billionaires need. You bet folks had a problem with that. Self-proclaimed socialist Bernie Sanders took to Twitter to slam rich people who own yachts and screeched that they can't have it all. Then people began to slam Bernie back because he owns 3 homes, all worth over $500,000 each. On his Twitter post, Sanders, the former Democrat candidate for president who couldn't even beat Hillary Clinton, demanded to know, how many yachts do billionaires need? How many cars do they need? Give us a break. You can't have it all. The Vermont senator, though, is a complete hypocrite when it comes to riches. After all, the career politician is a millionaire who owns 3 extremely expensive homes. 3! It makes one wonder, how many homes does a socialist need, Mr. Senator? Indeed, after dropping out of the race for president last year, where he pushed so far left policies like free education, government-controlled health care, and oppressive regulations on businesses to kill jobs, Sanders bought his 3rd home for around $600,000. Sanders uses his 3rd house with 500 feet Lake of Champlain beachfront as a vacation home, the Washington Free Beacon wrote. And his latest purchase is on top of the other 2 $500,000 plus homes he owns. Naturally, folks on Twitter, we're not going to let Sanders get away with this hypocrisy. The extremely rich socialist senator was destroyed on his own tweet. I'm going to read some of these. It says, while not a true Democrat, your question is ludicrous coming from a socialist with 3 homes, and the liberals call me clueless. Another one says, which of your 3 homes did you tweet that from? How many houses do you have? Again, Bernie. He gets to enjoy his lavish lifestyle while others have to give up theirs. I don't understand this man. You make this too easy. How many houses do you need? Greedy Bernie Sanders owns 3 houses, is in the top 6% of U.S. income, and flies around on private planes. This man doesn't value freedom or civil society. He is fundamentally totalitarian, preying on weak minds and stoking envy. While you're lecturing rich people about money, can you tell us how many $575,000 vacation homes you recently purchased? Read Orwell's Animal Farm, Senator. The ending of that book should give you some pause for asking this publicly. How many homes do you need? Are you happy with your current 3? Bernie, I am slowly becoming convinced that you may be a fraud, and that makes me sad. Question, replace yachts with homes, and what do you have? Answer, a hypocrite. Other acceptable answers include fraud, phony, or charlatan. And that's all I have for you in this episode. If you like what we're doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news, and don't forget to subscribe. That way you'll stay informed. I'll see you in the next episode.